Hello, I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, and welcome to part 2 of episode 22 of KRAD COVID readings. On part 1 of episode 22, I read the first third of Ragnarok and Roll, the title story in the collection, Ragnarok and Roll, Tales of Cassie Zukav, Weirdness Magnet. This is part of my cycle of urban fantasy stories set in Key West, Florida. And we now continue the story with part 2. That night, Mayor Fred's was packed. All the seats were taken, and people were jammed onto the dance floor. I procrastinated getting there, so the band was already on stage and meandering through a lackluster version of Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Love. I found Bobby and Jaina both leaning against the merch table. Gratefully, I walked over to them. Of Bolverk, I saw no sign, but the place was densely packed. Way more than was normal, even on a Friday night, so he could have been almost anywhere in the bar and I wouldn't see him. They finished butchering Zeppelin, and the room exploded in applause. Bobby and Jaina were among them, to my disgust. "Hey, Cass," Bobby said, "aren't these guys great?" "Fucking A," Jaina added. "They fucking rock, yeah!" "Really?" I just stared at them. "They're not that hot. Certainly nothing on you guys. What the hell happened, anyhow?" Bobby and Jaina exchanged glances. Then Jaina said, "I need a cigarette." The three of us went out onto Green Street so Jaina could suck on nicotine and we could talk in peace. Given that Jotunheim's next song was Money for Nothing, which was A, one of my favorite songs, and B, eerily appropriate for my POV, I was just as happy to be farther away from it. While Jaina lit up, Bobby said, "We just can't find a damn drummer, and hiring one's proving impossible. They either cost too much or they won't take the rehearsal time." I couldn't help myself. "You guys rehearse?" "Ha fucking ha, Zukav," Jaina said. She had a thing for referring to people only by their last names. "We gotta get a drummer up to speed and in sync, and we can't do that with a new guy every damn weekend. Some of us have lives, you know." "Since when?" I thought those words, but it was actually Bobby who said it. "Anyhow," she continued to me, "we figured we should just take a break. Didn't realize they'd go and hire someone so awesome." "Okay, seriously?" I shook my head. "What is the big deal about Jotunheim? I mean, they're okay, but you guys are 6 times the band they are." "That's sweet, Zukav," Jaina said through a cloud of exhaled cigarette smoke. "But you gotta say that because you're our friend." "No, really, I don't. If you guys sucked, I'd say so." Bobby regarded Jaina with a smile. "She's got a point." Jaina shrugged and took another drag. "Still, these guys fucking rock. Pity they don't have keys." "Yeah, I just hope we get the gig back and we finally do find a drummer. We're holding an audition in the garage Sunday afternoon." Bobby looked at me. "Want to come watch?" My feeling on music has always been similar to what they say about sausages. Love them, don't want to see the behind-the-scenes stuff. Luckily, I had a good excuse. "Can't, I'm doing 2 dives on Sunday." "Shit, Zukav, they got you doing the morning dive?" Jaina was laughing at me. "I can set the alarm." "Yeah, and get Debbie to give you the coffee through an IV, and you might manage to be awake before 11. Bobby chuckled. "Come on, let's go back inside." "Nah," I said with a sigh. "It's just not the same in there without you guys. I'm gonna head back." We exchanged goodnights. Jaina finished her cigarette, and they went in while I headed home. Briefly, I contemplated trying another bar for the evening, but I found my enthusiasm oddly waning. I just wanted to go home and curl up into a ball. I arrived just as Debbie was locking the front door for the night. "Hiya, Cass," she said. "We got a new one in 9. Big old guy with only one eye. Named Bolverk?" I asked in surprise. Room number 9 was downstairs of the cottage next to mine. With similar surprise, Debbie said, "Yeah, you know him? He was on my dive today." "Well, thanks for telling him about us. Good night." I hadn't told him about the Botroff house, which was a failing on my part, because I usually make a habit of talking the B&B up to C-Clip's customers. For that matter, I always talked up C-Clips to the B&B guests. But now I was starting to feel seriously stalked by this guy. This time I didn't even try to go to sleep. Just spent the night downloading my pictures from the dives, catching up on email, web surfing, and trading insults with Captain Botroff. The rest of the weekend got progressively weirder. Bolverk kept signing up for my afternoon dives. I didn't make it back to where that weird tail was again, as the other divers made specific requests for other spots, and the customer is always right. And Jotunheim kept playing to bigger and bigger crowds at Mayor Fred's. In fact, their biggest crowd was Sunday night, which was usually the second deadest night of the week after Tuesday. To make matters worse, the 3 surviving members of 1812 were there both nights, and they were all bopping to the music. Even Chet, who doesn't bop to anything. I stuck around both nights, partly because I wanted to keep an eye on Bolverk, who was sitting there nursing what Mira told me was bourbon every night, and partly to see if maybe I was just missing something. Whatever it was, though, I couldn't find it. Sunday night, between sets, I was standing in line for the women's room, something I'd never had to do on a Sunday night before, and Gunnar noticed me. Wasn't sure why, beyond the fact that at 5'11" with a mess of blonde curls, I tend to stand out. But he peeled off from these two brunettes who were hitting all over him to say, "I have been noticing you." I stared down at him. He was half a head shorter than me. "Oh, yeah?" I tried to put on my best Southern California whatever voice. "Yes. You're the only woman in the entire place who is not having a good time, yet you keep coming back." I smirked. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. I am simply surprised. He showed perfect teeth when he smiled, and I swear to God, his eyes glinted. "Do you not find it odd that no one else in this establishment feels as you do?" "Yeah, well, I can't stand American Idol or Steven Spielberg movies either, so I guess I'm used to it." Thankfully, the line moved forward, and I was able to enter the inside of the women's room, the one place Gunnar dared not follow. As the door closed behind me, I saw two more women glom onto him like moths dive-bombing a candle. Okay, so the guy was the lead singer of a band that had been packing the house like no one had packed it before, but even taking that into account, ego much? He's got half of Key West falling at his feet, but he's got to know why it's not half plus one? I sat fuming during the second set, made worse by how much Bobby, Chaina, and Chet were enjoying themselves. First of all, Chet enjoying himself was just weird. Though, in some ways, it was worth hanging out listening to Jotunheim's drivel just to see this sight, if for no other reason than it was bound to provide blackmail material down the line. But more importantly, these guys were totally eclipsing 1812. Every other band in the universe would be ripshit over what these guys were pulling off, but there they were, just bopping along. After the final song, an appallingly uninspired version of Joined Together, about which the nicest thing I could say was that Gunnar played a decent harmonica, I left without even saying goodbye to anyone. It was around 3, but since it was Sunday night, or Monday morning, whatever, the streets were pretty sparsely populated. Some of the bars closed early on Sundays, and the ones that were open weren't all that crowded. So I was all alone at the corner of Duval and Caroline when the giant jumped me. We're talking an actual giant here. He was at least 8 feet tall, and that's not an exaggeration. He had a thick beard, a huge nose, and breath that came straight from Satan's ass. His arms were also the size of my entire torso, and one of them was grabbing right for me. "Hey, leave her alone!" The voice came from my left and was oddly familiar. Sure enough, it was the guy who'd asked me for directions to a strip club and commented on my height Thursday night. He was running up to the giant, screaming at him. At least, he was running until the giant backhanded him across the place, sending blood flying out his nose as an entire body skidding across the street. A woman screamed. I just kept staring at the giant. I'd seen some weird shit in my time, from the Nixie that killed Zeke and a bunch of others, to the Dragon in the Garden, to Captain Botroff, and that was just here in Key West. You don't even want to know about that thing I stumbled across in San Diego. Now that I was over the initial shock, and since my drunken admirer had been kind enough to distract the giant at the cost of some serious pain, the least I could do was take advantage. I kneed him in the groin. Like any male, the giant screamed in agony at that, right in my face, since he bent over after I damaged the family jewels, at which point I realized that his breath didn't come from anywhere as nice as Satan's ass. "Step away from the lady, nice and slow, Chuckles." I turned to see Leo pointing a gun at the giant. The giant snarled at Leo. Leo pulled the trigger. I'd never heard a gun fired in my life up to that point. My parents were crunchy granola Southern California types, and I honestly thought everyone in Key West, beyond, law enforcement, was too laid back to pack heat. For the record, it doesn't sound anything like a firecracker or a car backfiring or anything else I've ever heard. It's also incredibly fucking loud, especially when it was fired less than 15 feet from you. If I didn't spend 4 nights a week listening to loud music, it might have messed up my hearing, but mine came pre-damaged. Another scream from the giant, and then he turned and ran around the corner. Shaking my head, I chased him, but as soon as I turned onto Caroline, there was no sign of him. Leo ran right up behind me, holding the gun with both hands. "How the hell did a 10-foot dude disappear like that?" he asked. "Dunno. But thanks, Leo. No problem." I shook my head. "My name's Cassie Zukav. I know, Debbie told me." He grinned. "Figured you'd let me know in your own time. Come on, let's see if there's any of these fools called 911 on their cell phones. 2 of them had, as it turned out. I went over to my admirer, who was sitting up on the pavement of Duval Street, his head leaning back while a brunette woman cared for him. I can't believe you did that, she was saying. You okay? Yeah. The woman was holding a tissue to his nose as he leaned his head back. As I got closer, I saw that his nose was still bleeding. He was talking in a nasal voice from the nasal blockage. I guess now we're even. I frowned. Huh? I was really drunk Thursday night, and if you'd given me the right directions, I'd have wound up at an actual strip club instead of a closed museum, and Tanya here would have killed me. The brunette shot him a disgusted look. You were going to a strip club? I didn't, though, and it's because of this lady. See, you got your nose broken for her? Jesus, Billy! Leaving Billy and Tanya to their domestic bliss, I hung out until the cops and the ambulance arrived. Wasn't sure what to tell them, but, well, one of my closest friends is a federal agent, and I'd never hear the end of it from him if I didn't make a proper report. That particular ordeal took a couple of hours, and I finally stumbled back to the Botroff house at 5. The captain actually sounded relieved when I showed up. Thank God. I was beginning to grow concerned. First your uncharacteristic early returns, and now tardiness. I've been late before, I muttered as I took my shirt off. The captain didn't even make a fuss, which told me a lot right there. Tonight is far from a standard night. I wasn't really in the mood for riddles. What's that supposed to mean? I mean that the occupant of the ground floor of the next cottage over attempted to gain ingress into this dwelling. However, I was able to drive him away. It took me a moment to parse Botroff's words. Hang on, Bolverk was here? Indeed. And he saw you? Yes. Had he been a less belligerent sort, I might have welcomed another to share words with, but he seemed intent upon seeing you. He used a phrase I've heard you utter from time to time. Low-key. I snorted as I climbed out of my bathing suit and crawled into bed. Yeah, low-key isn't exactly this guy's style. He's the least of my problems tonight. As my head sunk into my pillow, I gave the captain the brief version of the night's events. That settles it then. I will brook no argument, Miss Zukav. I will remain vigilant tonight to guard against any further assaults upon you. It was a testament to how incredibly tired I was that it never occurred to me that the captain's notion was at all creepy until long after I fell asleep. The next few days were shockingly normal. I did my afternoon and occasional evening dives at Sea Cliffs. I helped Debbie out around the B&B. I saw very little of Bolverk, and no giants leapt out at me on Duval Street. Apparently, Bolverk did a couple of dives with Andy during the week. I tried not to be insulted. I was almost starting to believe things were getting back to normal until I was greeted by a text from Bobby when I woke up Thursday morning. Jaina quit 1812. Drinks after diving? I stared at my phone in disbelief. Bobby and Jaina had been best friends since kindergarten. 1812 was their baby. How could Jaina quit? I texted back a simple sure, then got ready to head to Sea Cliffs. Bobby wouldn't even talk about it during the dive. Afterward, we went straight to the waterfront and sat at the long wooden bar. 2 beers, Jack, Bobby said to the bartender as soon as her ass hit the stool. Grinning, I added, and I'll have 2 beers too. Very funny, Jack said with a sour face, and he went and got us each just the 1 beer. Cannot believe her, Bobby said after Jack handed her a full pint. This whole week, all she's talked about is Jotunheim and how good they are, and how if they just had keyboards, they'd be perfect. We're trying to audition drummers, and she's talking about this other band. So when we finally get someone, she quits on us. That surprised me. You got a drummer? Yeah, she smiled. Another girl, believe it or not. Poor Chet's going to be the only guy now. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, he must hate that. Well, you never know with Chet. Bobby sighed and gulped down more beer. Anyhow, it's not just that Jaina quit. I mean, bands don't last forever, and teaching takes up a lot of her time, and it was always kind of in the back of my head that the band could fall apart, you know? She sipped some more beer. But to go to another band? I mean, 1812 was us. It's like she's not even my best friend anymore. Frowning, I asked, what other band? Didn't I tell you? No. Oh, sorry. Yeah, she quit to join up with Jotunheim. I thoughtfully sipped some more beer before making my next statement. How do you plan to kill her, and how much help do you need for me to dispose of the body? Don't tempt me. Bobby shook her head. What especially sucks is I got us a gig at the Hog's Breath tomorrow night. That was a completely open-air bar on Duval, about half a block from Mayor Fred's. Looks like we're going to have to do it now as a trio. Well, the Hog's Breath has a tiny stage anyhow. Jaina would have had to use the Casio, and you know how much she hates that. Yeah. Bobby finished off her beer. You want to meet the new drummer? She's meeting me and Chet at Fred's tonight. I stared at Bobby as if she'd grown another head. Excuse me? Why are you going to Fred's? Bobby shrugged. Jana's first night on the keys. When we were 8, we were both already singing and playing music a lot, and we pinky swore to each other that we'd never miss the other one performing. There've been a few we've missed because of other commitments, and I won't be able to see her tomorrow, but I've got no excuse tonight. How about, sorry, but you just pissed all over our friendship, so I think I'll skip it? Tempting, but it was a pinky swear. When you were 8, I said slowly. Seriously, you're going to torture yourself for this? Bobby grinned. Do not mock the sanctity of the pinky swear. Then the grin fell. Besides, there's 2 other things. One is, she'll make Jotunheim sound even more awesome. And also, I want a reminder that I still think our friendship means something. That drew me up short. Holding up my pint, I said, I'll drink to that. We risked actually eating the food at the waterfront and then headed back to Key West. After I changed clothes, I wandered up to Green Street. Leo nodded hello as I passed by the Bull, and I nodded back. You hear if they caught the guy? I asked. He shook his head. Nah, I ain't heard shit about it. Figures. When I got to Green Street, there were already people spilling out onto the sidewalk, as Mayor Fred's was packed to the gills. The show hadn't even started yet. I didn't even want to think about what the waitstaff was going through inside. I saw Bobby and Chet standing with a short redhead. Bobby waved when she saw me coming toward them. Hey, Cass, can you believe this? No, in fact, I'm pretty well convinced this is a mirage. Good thing the PA pipes the music out here, too. Bobby looked over at the redhead. Ginny Blake, this is Cassie Zukav, our biggest fan. I winced. Seriously? That's how you introduced me? Not my friend Cassie or my dive master at C-Clips Cassie, but our biggest fan? Chet stared at the crowds all around us. This rate, you're going to be the only fan we got left. Ginny held out her hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, Cassie. I've heard a lot about you. Returning the handshake, I said, well, don't believe any of it. I'm actually pretty damned awesome. Good to know. Ihor's voice came over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together tonight, and now every single night, for Mayor Fred's new house band, Jotunheim. Everybody around us cheered wildly and clapped. My jaw fell. I leaned over to Bobby. Every night? What about Fiona and those 2 guys with the beards? Bobby shrugged. Guess they'll have to play somewhere else. So the Monday and Wednesday acoustic acts got screwed along with 1812, not to mention losing the Tuesday open mic. I mean, all right, you can't argue with crowds like this, but it still wasn't fair. The piano opening of I'm Still Standing came over the PA, and 1812 had covered this enough for me to know it was Jana's fingers tickling the ivories. Obviously, they were taking advantage of their new band member right off. Sure enough, the next 3 songs were all keyboard heavy. Jana was a virtuoso, and Bobby was right. She improved Jotunheim's sound tremendously. But she also showed up how mediocre the rest of the band was. At least, to me. Everyone else was eating it up, with one exception. Ginny seemed unmoved by all of this, too. I leaned over to her after she golf clapped while everyone else was having orgasms over a blah version of Kashmir. It's about time someone else was unmoved by these guys. Ginny just smiled. I added, it's like someone has cast a spell over the whole damn island. She raised her eyebrows. Maybe someone has. Just after she said that, I felt something brush across my nose. Looking up, I saw white flakes start to fall from the sky. Okay, I'm from Southern California, and I live on Key West. It took me a few minutes to recognize snow. Ditto most of the folks around me, since snow is just about the last thing anyone expects to find in South Florida in springtime. Within a few minutes, the snow was starting to really pour down, and it was getting cold. I gotta go, I said. Besides the fact that listening to Jotunheim suck while standing on a street being snowed on was pretty low on my list of ways I wanted to spend my Thursday nights, I had a feeling things were going to be bad at the B&B. After navigating the throngs of very confused people on Duval, I got to the Bottroff house and arrived just in time for Debbie to beg me to drive to the storage unit down on Virginia Street, since I was the only person she knew who owned a vehicle that could handle snowy roads. 2.5 hours later, after using the heat in Rocinante for the first time since I left San Diego, I stumbled into the snow-covered garden, my feet like ice cubes from walking through snow on flip-flops. Just getting to the storage unit and back, all of a mile from the B&B, took 90 of those minutes. The rest of the time was spent distributing heaters, extra blankets, and other stuff I liberated from the unit and tossed into the back of Rocinante. By the time I got to my cottage, the final space heater in hand for my own room, my bones were cold. I'd never been this chilled in my life. Bolverk was sitting on the steps. "Shouldn't you be in your room hiding from the weather?" I asked tiredly. He rose to his feet. "I was waiting for you, Cassie Zukav. We must speak." I winced at the use of my full name. My twin brother was named Pollux. Yes, really. Talk to my parents. We went by Cassie and Paul for a reason. "Can it wait until morning?" I asked plaintively. "I have a bed that desperately needs to have me sleeping in it. After all this running around, I doubted I'd have trouble sleeping this much before my bedtime." "No, it cannot. Fimbulvetter is upon us, which means that Loki's plan to bring about Ragnarok has started to come to fruition." I blinked. Okay, basically none of that made any kind of sense. The man you know as Gunnar Rickardson is in fact the trickster Loki. He is my blood brother. I am Odin, the Allfather of the Aesir. And we do not have much time. To be continued. Tune in Friday, the 15th of May, for the final part of Ragnarok and Roll as the last part of episode 22 of KRAD COVID readings. You can check me out online at DeCandido.net. You can read my blog at DeCandido.wordpress.com. There is a pinned post at the beginning of the blog that has a link to the guide to all of my Cassie Zukav fiction, which has appeared in a lot of different places. This collection only has 9 of the stories. There's a bunch more that have appeared in other anthologies as well. So check that out. Please support me on Patreon, patreon.com/crad. There's all sorts of neat stuff there, including movie reviews, TV reviews, cat pictures, excerpts from my works in progress, and copies of my first drafts as I complete them, and also vignettes featuring my original characters, including a bunch with Cassie. Thank you very much for watching, and please stay safe.